Good morning, everyone. For the next 45 minutes, we are going to discuss small state diplomacy in a complex order. I have the pleasure and the honor to welcome Nikos Christodoulidis, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Cyprus, Nikola Dimitrov, Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration of North Macedonia, and of course Miltiadis Varvitsiotis, Alternate Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic, and last but not least, Professor Anders Wivel from the University of Copenhagen. Small states are the typical units of the system. However, they are usually overlooked, and they are overlooked despite the fact that some of the most entrepreneurial states in the international system are small states. In that respect, quite a few small states have been among the most successful states in coping with the pandemic. So, how do small states survive and succeed in such a complex order despite their weaknesses? We hope our panel, which combines theory and practice, will shed some light on the challenges and opportunities small states are confronted with in the current multiplex order. Professor Wivel, let me start with you and ask what changes is the current multiplex order bringing for small states, and what can the Lilliputians of the international system do in order to succeed?
I think that if we look at the current international order, I think we see 4 mega trends which are all of importance for the smaller states. The first one is what Richard Haass, a noted policymaker and analyst in the US, has called the abdication of the United States. And even though Joe Biden, the president, now says that America is back, it's clear that America is back in a different way than we knew America for most of the latter half of the 20th century. The US is no longer taking the same kind of responsibility as previously for the development and maintenance of global international institutions. The second trend that we see is the rise of China. And we see a rise of China also in the context of the decline of the US. And if the decline of the US and the retrenchment of the US creates a risk of no hegemony taking global responsibility, the rise of China adds to this the risk of great power conflict, even war, but at least competition, increased competition between the superpowers or great powers. Fourth, we see the decline of old institutions. We see that the institutions that we developed during the latter half of the 20th century and the first part of the 21st century are not as strong as they used to be and seem to be slow and have problems in solving the challenges that we face. And all of this together, and also enhanced, I think, by the Trump presidency, but also the increased intergovernmentalism in Europe, we've seen that there's an increased nationalism, or not just America first, but any country first, each for his or her own country. And I think for small states, this creates 3 risks. There's the risk of marginalization. If you're not the Arctic, if you're not East Asia, if you're not one of the burning spots in the world that the great powers zoom in on, there's the risk that you're forgotten as a small state, that nobody really cares what you think. The second consequence that we see for small states is what we call the risk of parallel action, that we agree on goals, but we compete to achieve these goals rather than to cooperate. So we have incentives to go it alone rather than cooperating. And the third consequence for small states is the risk of overload. There are simply so many challenges at the moment. There are simply so many demands from the great powers, also conflicting demands, that there's the risk that for small administrations, diplomacies, militaries, you cannot simply do it all. So what is the solution? Very briefly, if we look at what we know about small states and how they behave in international affairs, we know that one road to success is for small states to act smart or entrepreneurial as small states. And I think there are three aspects of this. The first one is to be a problem solver. We must admit that the great powers set the agenda in international affairs, but we face common problems. So small states should think, how could they add to solving these problems, and how could they cooperate with like-minded states in order to make the problem solving that they can see their own interests in. The second one regards the preferences of the small states. Even though we're small states also have interests, and the small states should define their bastions. What is it that we want to negotiate on, and what is non-negotiable seen from the small state? And finally, take advantage of being weak and small. Quite often, it's more easy for small states to take on the role as chief negotiator, honest broker in negotiations. That's really a road into getting influence and getting some of the agenda setting power that you cannot get because you're usually weak in terms of power. You can get it if you get the right position in negotiations.
Thank you, Professor Wiewel. Minister Christodoulidis, given the complexity of the current order as analyzed by Professor Wiewel, what are the main challenges and opportunities you think small states in Europe confront from a practice perspective?
First of all, allow me to thank you and the Delphi Economic Forum for the invitation to discuss with distinguished colleagues this very, very important topic. And let me publicly thank you, Rebecca, for dealing with the small states, because as a professor very correctly mentioned, most of the time we are ignored in this international system, and especially complex international system. Coming now to your question, allow me first to do a theoretical comment, an academic comment. When we talk about small states, it's important to make a distinction. And what I mean, both Cyprus and Luxembourg are small states, member states of the European Union. But nobody can claim that Cyprus and Luxembourg, they have the same challenges and the same opportunities. So it is very important from a theoretical point of view to take under consideration the special characteristics of each small state. For example, in our case, the biggest challenge is to face an aggressive neighbor. The biggest opportunity is the fact that we are located in a region of great geopolitical importance with a lot of problems. Think of example, the latest developments in our neighborhood. We have the opportunity to play the role of the honest broker. This is a characteristic that a small state can play much more successfully. We don't have a hidden agenda, so we can play this role. And also, in our case, there are other opportunities like being a bridge between the region and the European Union. We know the region much better than our colleagues in Brussels, especially from countries that are located far away from the region. So special characteristics of small states, geography, political history are very important. So now, as a general comment about your question, and given the complexity of the current international world, the international system, the threat and the questioning of multilateralism, which is clear, nobody can challenge this, the questioning of the global governance, the fact that states opting instead for insularism, the erosion of rules-based international system, the violation of basic human rights and civil liberties, all those are crises and challenges that I believe they offer some opportunities to small states. So small states, they have opportunities towards two directions as we approach the issue from Cyprus. It's for most states to take a multilateral lead, to play the honest broker, what I mentioned before. And the second one is for more states to play a role towards enhanced regional cooperation. It's what we call in Cyprus minilateralism instead of multilateralism. And I was very pleased, and I would like to mention this, I was very pleased, for example, to read last week in Foreign Affairs an article that encouraged the US government and the new administration, the new US administration, to seize the momentum created by the Abraham Accords and to deepen them by working with small states that they don't have a hidden agenda. And there was a special reference to Cyprus towards this direction. My last comment on your question, I fully agree with the professor who mentioned about we're witnessing the unwillingness of the United States to play the role that they used to play. At least the perception in our region, the perception of all countries, is that we see a disengagement of the United States or a selective engagement in the developments of our region. This is a challenge, but also it is an opportunity for the like-minded countries of the region working through minilateralism to work together to commonly face the challenges, but also take advantage of the opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Minister Christodoulidis. Minister Dimitrov, what is the perspective from North Macedonia, a non-EU member state, and a very different case from Cyprus?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of the Delphi Economic Forum. It's always a great privilege for me to be here. And since I'm here in Athens, I'd like to congratulate the Greek people for the bicentennial of the revolution. First of all, maybe brief remark on what small states are. To us, Greece is far from a small state. It's a big state, so it's very relative. And it's not only size, it's also the economic potential, so the GDP. I think military resources also mean something. The network of friendships a country has also makes a big difference. The more friends you have, the more powerful and influential you become. So I think we have to take that into account. I think our friend Jean Asselborn, the foreign minister of Luxembourg, that Nikos also mentioned, will not be upset with us if we use Luxembourg as an example. Per capita, it's probably the richest member state of the European Union. Luxembourg on its own is different than Luxembourg within the Benelux cooperation. So regional groupings, regional cooperation clusters matter. Then Luxembourg is a member of NATO, which has another layer of importance, and then of course the European Union. So you also inspired me, you mentioned the Lilliputians of our global system, the Jonathan Swift's Gulliver Travel. They managed to tie him up and even made him fight on their behalf, to do their fighting. So I think it will be a mistake to completely underestimate small states in international relations. We've learned many lessons in our 30 years since independence. We managed to join NATO with the support of our neighbors in Athens. So I think small states like predictability and integration. It's in some way the instinct to seek shelter. You're covered when you have bigger friends around you. Geography also, as Minister Christodoulidis mentioned, also makes a big difference. It's one thing to have another small states, a group as neighbors, or you have bigger neighbors, and it's quite a different story if they're friendly or if they're not so friendly. So I think we have a keen interest to endorse a rules-based international system where multilateralism matters. The honest brokers is, I think, a very interesting point because we don't really have vested interests. We are usually, especially on issues and countries beyond our region, we can definitely play that role of an honest broker. So in our diplomacy and foreign policy, in these last years, the approach has been to focus on the future, to focus on common interest, to make it difficult for others to raise an issue with you. So to be friendly, to be open, and to work together. And I think this, I know that we will also discuss that in more details, this became even more important in this pandemic times, this challenge. And I can tell you many details about cooperation with Greece, with other countries in the region that really made a difference in how we faced the challenges of the pandemic.
We are going to discuss the pandemic later. So, Minister Varvitsiotis, how does Greece look at this matter of challenges and opportunities, especially after 3 consecutive crises?
Let me first thank the guests who are here in Athens today. Actually, the international participation in this Delphi Economic Forum makes us very proud of hosting an event of exchange of ideas at the global level and definitely at a regional level. Well, as my friend Nikolai said, it's a kind of relativity. It compares to, well, it matters to whom you are compared with. If we are compared with China, definitely we are a small state. If we are compared to Cyprus, definitely we are a bigger state. And until 2004, we were one of the smallest states in the European Union. And after the enlargement of 2004, we became an average size member state. I would like to say a few things that have to do with the European perspective of this issue, because we are living in Europe. Definitely the global challenges are there, but we want to work and cooperate in a framework that everybody should abide by the same rules, no matter how big or small you are. You should follow the same kind of procedures. Definitely, you should express your solidarity at the level you can contribute to that solidarity, and you have certain obligations in terms of defending the common goal. The pandemic actually highlighted the importance of this extended cooperation. And we realized that nobody could surf in these turbulent waves alone. That we needed this extended cooperation, that we needed to put together joint medical plans or vaccination plans in order to combat the challenge. And we should also apply the same rules for traveling, for Medicare, or for the protection of our citizens. So coordination, solidarity, and actually joining a bigger group for a small state is a refugee. It's a refuge. It's the point where you can actually feel that you have others with which you fight the same and common challenges. Let me say 2 things commenting of what has been said already. Definitely geography matters. It's different to have a difficult neighbor that challenge your sovereignty, and another thing to have your cousins surrounding you with whom you speak the same language, you share the same values, and you have extended economic cooperation. The other thing is how much you can participate in any global scheme. We took the example of Luxembourg. Luxembourg, no matter how much they raise their military expenditure, they wouldn't be able to find enough Luxembourg soldiers to form a big army to participate in their NATO obligations. So small states have also and should have also the ability to participate at a more voluntary basis or more preferred upon to what their most capabilities are invested in to more global schemes. So actually we can do a cherry picking from the abilities of the small states in order to form a common approach in difficult situations.
Thank you. Minister Dimitrov, given this background, what are the main goals of North Macedonia? How do you think a small state and North Macedonia in particular can navigate complexity effectively?
Yes. Since '93, I think we've set our strategic direction to be close and then join the, let's call it the political West. Those values, democracies, freedoms, human rights, and civil liberties. So we did one. We are the youngest and the 30th member state of NATO, an alliance for peace, which is important in particular when times are unpredictable and where the frameworks that we used to take for granted are now somewhat shaken. We live in a changing world. I think the whole global system is, to some extent, is in transition. Then we are part of a region that is geographically European and encircled by member states of the European Union, even though many, in particular in the West, when they think the Balkans, they think we border the European Union. We are actually within. Economically, we share the European destiny. 3/4 of what we trade is with the common market. Almost half of Greece is an important trading partner. Almost half of what we produce goes to the German market. Also, about 3/4 of every foreign direct investment that comes to North Macedonia is a company from one of the member states of the European Union. So we are there, and we are, I think, one of the more striking sagas when it comes to European integration. A baby born in Skopje would turn 20 years old if it was born on the day we signed the accession, the Association and Stabilization Agreement with the European Union. We lost generations and many years. We removed the obstacles. The Commission repeatedly says we are ready to start the journey, the accession talks. And one way how to help our case is, and I've been doing that lately, traveling to many capitals in Europe, is to explain why this is also in the interest of the member states and the Brussels institutions. If we want this to be a geopolitical commission, if that commission and this union cannot make a difference in a region when there is promise of membership ever since Thessaloniki 2003, when we have funds through the IPA mechanism where we can do things, then we can forget about making a difference beyond the European Union. Then, because of the praise that we received in resolving bilateral issues, the reform agenda at home, I think what happens with us, whether Europe keeps its promise, will be a message also for the rest of the region. Is it worth doing difficult things or not? Will Europe deliver on what they promised they will deliver if we deliver? So I think we've managed, not only, I think these are obvious elements, to raise the stakes that our success will be a success for the European Union, will be a success for our region, the Western Balkans, and will be a success for all of our neighbors, for Greece, but also for Bulgaria and our friendship with Bulgaria. So
it's a win-win game.
Yes, I think if we frame and think and act in this lose-lose or win-win, then we have bigger chances than entertaining or engaging in a blame game. A blame game, you can't really win when you have an issue with your neighbors if they don't win as well.
I think Minister Christodoulidis have a lot to say on this, and what is the view from Cyprus?
First of all, let me briefly to comment what Nikolai say and publicly express our support for the European bid of North Macedonia. We may be a small member state, but at the end of the day, we have one vote like Germany, France, and the bigger member state in the European Union, and Cyprus' vote counts. And I'm very concerned that as a European Union, we are losing credibility in the Balkans. We are talking about the geopolitical European Union, but we see compared to other geopolitical actors that we are losing the game. So I hope that in the next few weeks it will be possible to have positive news regarding North Macedonia, but in general, the region. I recently visited the region with Mr. Dendias, and we expressed, both Cyprus and Greece, our support for the European perspective of the Western Balkans. Now, coming to Cyprus, in the last few years, we are trying to be navigating in this complex international order by implementing what I say an extrovert foreign policy with clear focus and a clear vision regarding our region. As a country at the heart of the Mediterranean, of the Eastern Mediterranean, with historically excellent relations with all of our neighbors, a core pillar of our foreign policy is to how to work together with the neighboring countries from Eastern Mediterranean, Middle East, and the Gulf countries. And it was, and as a small state, it's very important to work with your neighbors in order to face the challenges, but also take advantage of the opportunities. And so that is why Cyprus, Greece, Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Egypt, UAE, we are implementing a very effective cooperation. We're working together in order to turn our region to a region of stability and prosperity. It is a region with a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges, but at the same time, a region with a lot of opportunities. And the only way to take advantage of the possible opportunities is by working together. And this is, I'm coming again to the term that I used before, this is what we call minilateralism. It is not possible to have the leading role in a multilateral organization, but in the region, we can work together. And it is important to mention that energy was the main reason that the countries of the region, they start the discussion of the regional cooperation. But very soon, all of us witnessed the added value of this cooperation, and now we're discussing security, defense, health, trade, research and innovation. Exactly, and this is a clear indication of the importance. We also we see that our cooperation is recognized by the European Union, by the United States. Certain EU member states are participating in an ad hoc basis in this cooperation. And we are working on positive agenda. We don't exclude any country of the region as long as they abide with international law and they respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries. We have results, and it is very important, for example, that recently we had the establishment of the EMGF, the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, with the participation of Egypt, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and Palestine together in the same organization, Jordan and Italy. And let me conclude by saying that we have a long-term vision. When the political conditions are there, our vision is to establish a regional organization, a regional forum for security and cooperation. The region probably is the only region in the world that no regional organization is established. And we believe by establishing such an organization, we will institutionalize our cooperation for the benefit of all countries of the region.
Thank you. What about the Hellenic Republic, Mr. Varvitsiotis? What are the main goals in order to navigate effectively the current complex order?
Well, I think the main challenge for Greece is how to make the EU enlarged in our immediate region. I'll tell you the example of Bulgaria. With Bulgaria, we had a long history of fights among us. And from the moment they joined the EU, we have an extended cooperation, the most peaceful and cooperative times that we have ever lived, and an extended economic cooperation as well, apart from the political and people-to-people cooperation. So by actually getting Albania and North Macedonia joining EU, finally we will get land borders with other member states. That's something that we have been deprived because from the beginning we were an isolated part of the European Union without physical borders with the rest of the European Union. I would like to say that the new process of enlargement that we have agreed last year should be a credible process and should be a process that actually is more speedy than the old process of enlargement through chapters and through negotiations that never ended. And it's important for this process to start immediately for all the candidate members. We are not willing to accept any decoupling between North Macedonia and Albania. We find this to be a disastrous approach to the regional security. We want also Montenegro and Serbia to start really speeding up their own process in order to cooperate closely to European Union. And as we said that this process should be credible and reversible in the case that any candidate member moves backwards towards its European obligation. On the other hand, Europe should keep its promises and should not delay any of these procedures. One more thing. We start now discussing about the future of Europe. And I've heard the President of the European Parliament last Sunday calling for changing and altering the treaties that actually attribute to member states the veto power. European Union has been a revolutionary idea because the member states actually seized of their powers and granted them to Brussels. They did it under one condition, that when it comes to their national interest, they would have the veto power to block anything that will be against their national interest. And the idea that we should speed up the European Union by sacrificing the existence of this voluntary union, it's, I think, against the spirit that we have tried to create all these years. And this is a union of ideas, values, and interests.
True. Thank you. We have just 7 minutes to conclude our panel, and I'm going to focus on the pandemic. Minister Varvitsiotis, we expect that the COVID-19 pandemic will transform the international relations, diplomacy, strategy. Are there any lessons to be learned from the period of the COVID-19 pandemic in order for small states to succeed? A brief comment.
To be brief, I'm very glad we have a European vaccination plan. Otherwise, the European Union would be dissolved from within if we were having competition for the vaccines. The second is that we need extended international cooperation. The third thing is that we are privileged to have available these vaccines to us should definitely share with the rest of the globe, and especially with our immediate neighborhood. We should definitely go forward, give more vaccines to COVAX, give more vaccines to our neighbors, and use this, this pool of resources that we have accumulated over the last year as a tool in order to promote stability, to promote extended cooperation, and to deal with humanitarian crises elsewhere.
Thank you. Mr. Dimitrov.
Briefly, I think there are many countries who did somewhat better than bigger countries. I think Greece actually coped quite well. We all had ups and downs, but I think altogether, Greece is one of the countries that sets an example how a rapid, engaged, centralized government can actually introduce preventive measures, in a way tame the spread of the virus. Small countries have limited resources. Some countries with very limited fiscal space will struggle, especially on the economic side, of mitigating the economic consequence. And this is why it's important institutions such as the World Bank to take this into account, because after we are done with the fight for life and health of the people, I think the economic struggles will definitely be our first priority. And I think we've learned how intense cooperation really helps. We maybe could have done a bit better, but the inclusion of the countries from the region in the joint procurement, the civil protection mechanism of the European Union, really made a difference. I'm gonna conclude. Whenever I visit Greece, I come up with a new Greek word. And I started with philia, then symphonia, then Galini. I would struggle if I have to translate Galini into English. I think the last time we met with Miltiadis, it was Orama, the vision, the future. And now on the debate about starting accession process and Europe delivering on it in its decision from last March, we should start, North Macedonia and Albania. It's Tora. Tora είναι η ώρα.
Okay. Nice. Minister Christodoulidis, what are the lessons from the COVID-19 period?
First of all, from a non-foreign policy perspective, I think the pandemic showed the importance for the states to invest more in emergency preparedness. It is very important, and certainly to invest more with long-term strategies on issues related to health. It is very important for all countries to invest in science and scientific research, especially on the health sector. Another key lesson is the need to invest on technology and digitalization. We all witness the importance of these two factors. From the foreign policy perspective, and I'm very glad that the pandemic has confirmed the value of multilateralism. And coming from a small member state, being a small member state of the European Union, I want to be fully honest with you, if Cyprus wasn't part of the big European family, it wasn't possible to face the pandemic, and especially in the area of the access of vaccines. So it is something that we need to recognize. At the regional level, I would like to mention this. We also, even during the pandemic, we worked with our neighbors, UAE, Israel, Greece, how to better tackle the pandemic. I will never forget that following a telephone conversation with my UAE colleague, in 24 hours, UAE sent to Cyprus and in Greece medical equipment in order to support us tackle the pandemic. So from the foreign policy perspective, the most important lesson learned, it was the confirmation of the importance of multilateralism.
Thank you. Professor Weibel, I think we've been overwhelmed by the practice perspective, very useful and valuable experience the ministers shared with us, and I have to say they touched upon the most important theoretical debates in small state literature. A brief comment of 1 minute if you had to wrap up the session.
First of all, thank you so much for such an interesting and insightful discussion. I think it's been it's been a very great experience being part of this, and I learned a lot. Three brief comments in terms of summary. I think you point to that small states have difference in characteristics and conditions, but also that they have shared interests in solutions. So that's the first point. The second point is that these solutions often take the form of cooperation, that there's a continued interest and importance of multilateral institutions and the rule-based order, but also both as an arena for cooperation and as a platform for influence, but also that we can focus more on unilateralism, on networks that can grow and become more as time goes by. And finally, as you pointed to, also take advantage of the action space, of the freedom of action that you have as small states. As long as you have a fairly rule-based order, as you have peace and are not threatened militarily, there's actually a lot that small states can do. And I think the debate here has also illustrated how much small states actually do and how successful they can be in many ways. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Minister. And thank you, all of you who attended the panel, for your attention.